Maryland's Sportscaster of the Year, Johnny Holiday.
Spencer Davis. Where are you, Spence? Sounded like me doing a game. Man, are you good? You are really good. I wanted to share just a couple of observations today. And congratulations to John and Christine and the foundation and all you continue to do to keep Zach's memory alive and his legacy alive. And before I introduce the keynote speaker today, that just happens to be one of our grandkids, I want to share with you some observations I had with Zach. When I met him as a basketball manager, you can almost immediately sense, as those of you that knew Zach well, that this was a very special young guy. Very special guy in so many different ways. He was positive, he had confidence, he was assured of himself, and every single time I did an interview with Zach, he would say to me, "No problem." And he was not feeling well. A lot of times that I talked to him, we played it back on the air, and he never complained. He never ever saw himself in a pity me situation. It was always, I'm gonna beat this thing. Cancer's not gonna get me. And I'm gonna fight and fight and fight my tail off to win. One of these days, we're gonna find a cure for cancer. We don't have to have events like this to talk about it anymore. We don't have to have fundraisers to get money to keep people aware of how important it is to get money for cancer research. And unfortunately, 5 years ago, in March, Zach lost his battle. And he was strong to the very end. He never, ever, ever complained. And the Zacking About Cancer Foundation, Against Cancer Foundation, is some way that his memory can continue to live and live for a long, long time. Living the dream, that was his saying. And I would see him after a treatment, and I could tell he wasn't doing well. "How you doing, Zach?" "Hey, living the dream, Mr. Holiday. Living the dream." And he did. And that's why he can light up so many faces in this room when you think back to all the good memories we all have of Zach Lederer and how important it was for him to be able to connect with young people that were in the same situation he was in and let them know, just keep fighting, keep that strong faith, and you're going to win this battle. And unfortunately, he did not, and he passed away at the age of only 20. We are fortunate in our family that our grandson today is cancer-free. But everybody's been touched in some way by cancer. I lost my mom, I lost my dad, both to cancer, one at 57. My father was 57 years old, my mother was 69 when she passed away. Zach's problem, his problem with cancer, the brain tumor that he had, was it had affected so many other parts of his brain. It was just very tough to get everything, every single piece of that cancer out of his body. In my grandson's case, I'll introduce to you now. He couldn't have any surgery. He'll tell you about his journey. He had the chemotherapy, he had the radiation, and he never, ever thought he had cancer. He had a wonderful attitude, just like Zach Lederer did, exactly the same way. "I'm gonna win." He said to me one time, "I think they misdiagnosed me." I said, "Really?" "Well, you've lost all your hair from the chemotherapy, so I guess that maybe they didn't." He said, "Yeah, but I was gonna get a buzz cut anyhow. Doesn't really matter." But his attitude was so strong, and today, when he was diagnosed at 11 years old, and now he's 21 years old, today is his birthday. And he wants to share. And he was a friend of Zach Lederer. They compared notes. They met at a Maryland basketball game. They compared what kind of problems Jack had and what kind of problems Zach had. And I am proud to say we have 11 grandkids, we have 7 grandsons. His brother Nick is with him today, who starts medical school in a couple of weeks. He wants to be an orthopedic surgeon. In case any of you need surgery, there's the guy right over there. So at this time, I want to have you meet one of our grandkids. He's a junior, soon to be junior at Wake Forest University down in North Carolina. Jack Raleigh. Jack?
Thank you for that very special introduction, Pa. It sounds really great when you have a grandfather like Johnny Holiday to introduce you. My name is Jack Raleigh. I'm 21 years old, a rising junior at Wake Forest University, and I'm 10 years cancer-free. I was asked to speak briefly to you today to give a little insight into the world of a cancer from a survivor's perspective. Some of the stuff I will say will be hard to hear, but bear with me while I give you a little peek into my own cancer journey. Back in the summer of 2008, when I was only 10 years old, I suddenly came down with a constant insatiable thirst. So naturally, I would drink a lot. And with this constant consumption of fluids, there came a lot of pee. And when I say a lot, I'm talking of upwards of 30 times a day. My parents quickly realized that a 10-year-old wasn't supposed to be getting up 5 to 6 times a night to pee like my grandfather does. So they didn't think that was normal, so they took me to the doctors to figure out what was going on. After a long day of tests, including an MRI that showed inflammation on my pituitary gland, I was diagnosed with something called diabetes insipidus, which is a very rare condition that is totally unrelated to sugar diabetes. The doctors knew it was a pituitary inflammation that was causing the DI, but they were unsure of what was causing the inflammation. So I had to take a pill twice a day that controlled my thirst and peeing, which seemed like a pain in my 10-year-old butt, but wasn't the end of the world. But I also had to do MRIs for every few months so they could follow the pituitary inflammation. After my third MRI, I remember being in the car with my mom that night and driving back to our house from somewhere, and she told me that in a few days I needed to get brain surgery. I'll never forget May 15, 2009, the day of my brain surgery at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. Only one parent was allowed to go back to the operating room with me. My dad is a lawyer and sweats when he merely walks into hospitals, let alone an operating room, and my mom is a NICU nurse who spends all of her hours working in hospitals, so I chose my mom. I remember holding my mom's hand and crying as they put me to sleep. Another vivid memory I have is when several days after the surgery, a doctor that I'd never seen before came into my hospital room. He sat down on my bed and he said very simply, "You have cancer." I remember that awful feeling of my heart sinking down in my stomach. And then it started to race a mile a minute. It was tough news for a 10-year-old kid to process. All I knew about people with cancer was that they were the bald, sick-looking people who died. And I cried to my parents telling them I didn't want to die. They tried to comfort me, telling me it was going to be okay. The days following my surgery were a whirlwind of awful moments for me and my family. I started my first 16 rounds of chemotherapy on June 3rd, 2009, my oldest brother Chris's 16th birthday. The night before, my father and my three brothers and I took turns shaving each other's heads so we would all be bald together. My mom filmed the whole thing and cried. Then over the next 3 months, I made countless drives to children's hospitals to stay a few days at a time in the hospital getting chemo treatments, MRIs, and also spinal taps. Needless to say, my summer of 2009 was not like Brian Adams' summer of '69. But by the end of my 16 rounds of chemo, my doctors gave me some much needed good news. The chemo did its job and the cancer was in remission. But there was a catch. I still had to go up to Boston to receive special proton beam radiation to finish off the tumor so it wouldn't come back. So my mom, little brother Liam, and I flew up to Boston for the next few months while my dad and my brothers Chris and Nick stayed home and held down the fort in Maryland. Radiation wasn't nearly as bad as chemo. It just drained me of my energy and made my head hurt. They put me in a special mask and bolted me down to a bed for my treatment 6 days a week for 8 weeks of treatment. At the end of the course of the radiation treatment, I got to ring the bell in the lobby of the treatment center. Everyone who gets radiation there gets to ring a bell that hangs on the wall, which was a sort of a celebration of being done with your treatment. My family and friends were there to watch, and there were a lot of tears that day. I'm very fortunate that I've been cancer-free since my treatments ended. As you all know, not everyone is so lucky. Cancer does not only affect the patient, it cuts much deeper. It cuts into family members and loved ones. I was only 10 years old when I was diagnosed, which now seems like kind of a blessing because I was young enough and clueless enough that I kind of just went with the flow and did whatever my doctors and parents told me to. I didn't fully understand the gravity of the situation because of my young age. I couldn't ever imagine being a brother, parent, or grandparent to a child with cancer and have to deal with the fully formed thoughts of a loved one with a dreaded disease. Just a few years ago, my little brother, Liam, was the same age. Just a few years ago, my little brother, Liam, was the same age I was when I was diagnosed. And I remember crying on multiple occasions when I realized how I would feel if he was the one who got cancer and I didn't. My older brothers, Nick and Chris, had to hear that their little brother had cancer and carry that thought with them every day as teenagers. And my mom and dad spent countless hours in the hospital room trying their best to be strong for their 10-year-old son. My family's strength and support is what really helped me through my cancer journey, and I'm so eternally grateful for them. When one is diagnosed with cancer, it doesn't ever go away, even if you are cured. For years after I was cured, I still had to have MRIs and spinal taps to check if it was all still okay. And because my tumor destroyed my pituitary gland, I take 10 pills a day and an injection of growth hormone. A day doesn't go by when I don't think about cancer and how grateful I am for being diagnosed. I'm grateful for my cancer because it taught me more than any classroom lecture, TED Talk, or Sunday sermon ever could. The greatest lesson I have learned is the importance of time. More specifically, the importance of how we choose to spend our time. I'm standing here in front of you today on my 21st birthday, 10 years cancer-free, and eternally grateful that time is still ticking for me. There are many different ways I could choose to spend this day, but none more important than to powerfully communicate to you the importance of fighting this dreaded disease called cancer. I'm so grateful for the incredibly strong and inspiring people that I have had the opportunity to meet who are also fighting cancer. People like Zach, who showed me what it means to savor our time here on earth and make a strong and positive impact on the people around them. I'll never forget the day I met Zach for the first time at a Maryland basketball game. My grandpa introduced me to him, and I remember his larger-than-life smile that rubbed off on anyone and everyone around him. I spoke with him for a while, and I remember being a bit starstruck because he was the Zacking guy that everybody was talking about. I remember we took a picture together, two cancer dudes flexing our muscles for the camera. Zach was also the first fellow fellow cancer patient that I made a connection with. And he was the first one I knew to lose his battle with cancer. His death had a tremendous impact on me. The positive impact that he made on others and his commitment to Maryland basketball inspires me to this day. Another is Willie Hughes, who was in fourth grade when he was diagnosed with a brain tumor a few years ago. I had the honor of becoming close friends with Willie, taking him to get ice cream or going to a Maryland basketball game or just hanging out with him. His powerfully positive personality would own any room when he was in the middle of physically draining treatments. He lost his fight with an aggressive glioblastoma about a year ago, but he made such an impact on people around him that his legacy is currently living on through the Crack Cancer Challenge that has grown into a viral fundraising effort for children's cancer. There was also Andrew Lee, another person who took his cancer in stride that made a positive impact on the lives of others. Andrew was in my brother Nick's class in high school. He was diagnosed with a rare form of kidney cancer, and he was a freshman in college. After he was diagnosed, his dad asked him what his dream in life was. Typical teenage boy answer, Andrew said that he wanted to own his own Nissan GTR sports car. The next day, Andrew's dad bought him the dream car, and Andrew painted it orange in honor of his kidney cancer. And he started a movement called Driven to Cure, and it is centered around the car that he always dreamed of owning. Willie Hughes, Andrew Lee, and Zach Lederer's legacies are three incredible examples of what it means to make a positive impact on this world, something that I strive to do in my own life. When I reflect on why I'm here, I think about those that aren't here anymore. We all know the incredible impact that Zach had and continues to have on so many people, and I can't help to think of the continued impact he would have been making if he were still here today. Zach wanted the world to be a better place because he was here. The Zacking Against Cancer Foundation is his legacy that lives on to raise money for cancer research in the hopes of one day finding a cure. Without cancer foundations like Zach's that help make strides towards cures, I probably would not be standing here to share my story with you today. So I ask you all to remember how precious our time here is, and please use it to make the world a better place, just like Zach did. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jack.